need. See, the younger son is always going to say, yeah, but I can do it myself. I don't need this. Watch me. And it's hard for us as parents, okay, and I can't tell you how many times I have to hold my wife back and say, let him fail. Let him hit that wall at 20 miles an hour, then 30, then 40. See if that'll change him. Oh, I could tell you lots of stories. I'll just give you one. It was the prom night. My oldest son's prom night. He had invited April. I don't know her last name. I don't care. I just know her name was April. He invited her to the prom, and she said, yes, you could take me. So he went and got a tux, and boy, we got a picture of it. He looked great. First time he'd ever worn a tux. Suck that gut in, put that chest out. And he had a corsage. He was ready to go, and he was driving my car. This becomes important later. Driving my car to go pick up April. Picked her up at her house, which is only about 3 miles from my house. Took her to the prom, went around, opened the car door for her. She got out of the car, and she said, thank you. And then she went to her second date and just left him standing there. Now, moms and dads, how would you feel if you saw that happen to your son? Yes, I wanted to kill her and all of her family. Then I thought, no, that's probably not going to help things. It gets worse. Then, after the prom was over, her second date took her to his car to take her home. She said, thank you, and she went to her third date. She had 3 prom dates set up as A, B, C, or if you will, Mo, Larry, and Curly Joe. Or Manny, Mo, and Jack. I wish I could say this was a happy story. It didn't have a tragic ending. The second young man committed suicide the next day. I wish I could tell you I'm just giving you a story to illustrate a point. That's what happened. And so now April felt like dirt. So what did I do? Well, I went to April's house and talked to her dad. And her dad, oh, wish you could see the look on his face. He felt so helpless, so lost. He had no idea that this was going on. He didn't know what to do next. He didn't know what foot to put in front of the other. He felt so bad for that family. It's easy to get lost. Some of us can become spiritually lost. And some of us can become morally lost. You recognize this guy, Jeffrey Wigand? Anybody know who that is? You remember that movie a few years ago called The Insider? Russell Crowe played this guy in the movie. Does everybody know who Russell Crowe is, this ugly Australian actor? He blew the whistle on Brown and Williamson. And because he blew the whistle and proved in a memo that's now a famous memo that they were deliberately nuking up the nicotine content when they said they weren't. But they were deliberately doing it under the table to get kids addicted quicker to their product. And he blew the whistle as the chief chemist. He was a vice president of the chemical division or something. He said, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to play this game. They fired him. Gone. And so about 10 months later, he went to CBS News. They had this little show called 60 Minutes on CBS. And they sent out a producer to say, this guy claims that something's going on at Brown and Williamson. And found out the story, did a whole thing where they taped him on tape. In fact, that's a shot from that tape. Well, they wanted to show it. They set a night to show it. And then the director of CBS News says, we can't do it. Can't show it. Why? Because Brown and Williamson owns a lot of the stock of CBS Incorporated. Okay, now what do you do? What do you do? Do you show it anyway? Or do you hold back? In the name of, this is the appropriate measure. See, whistleblowers don't talk about appropriate measures. Just like the prophets of the Old Testament. They're not interested in what makes us feel good. They're interested in what God wants. Didn't we sing a song a minute ago about, in His name we will glory? In His name we define our glory, who we are. So that's just 4. I could put up another 25. You know what they are as well as I do. All you got to do is come up here and hold the clicker and point, and you could preach the sermon as well as I could. We all know how easy it is to get lost. So, what happens to him when he goes into the wilderness? He squanders the gifts he's been given. It's an interesting word that's used in the original text. And let's just learn that word together and say it, shall we? Scorpioidzomai. Hear the first part? Scorpio. We get the word what from that? Right. A scorpion is literally, in the minds of the ancient thinkers who put this word together, someone who squanders their stuff, who just throws stuff around. They probably got that as they watched the scorpion make its nest, throwing the sand everywhere. That bug is a Scorpio. And that's where the word comes from in the original language. And that's what he does. He takes all this money that he insisted he had to have, and he blows it within a couple of months. Anybody been there? Yeah, we've all been there. At least we've been tempted to be there if we haven't actually operated on the temptation. But secondly, he takes a minimum wage job. Now, Grandma, I put that up there for you so you could see that baby kissing that pig right in front of everybody in church. Yeah. And of course, for a young Jewish boy, you probably can't sink any lower than this, which is why Jesus underlines it in his story. He knows his audience. So, he has to learn his true limitations. You know, like the pawn in the midst of all the give up. I like that graphic because it shows how many of us sometimes think, we really do think we're God. We can do whatever we want, whenever we want to. It doesn't matter who it hurts. Doesn't matter who it takes advantage of, because I have rights. Dadgummit. It doesn't matter how many people we leave in our wake. And for some of us, we never outgrow this. How many spouses we have in our wake, how many angry teenage children we have in our wake, how many angry bosses that we've ripped off or we've refused to listen to in our wake, whatever it is, wherever the area is. And then he overreacts by reassigning his father a new role, the role of employer. So what roles do lost boys try to reassign to the father quickly? Well, some view the father as the demanding boss. Like in that movie, The Devil Wears Prada. Meryl Streep had fun with this role. You know, I will just, that's all. She'd give somebody some kind of a horrible, outrageous demand, and then she'd say, that's all. And so for months after that movie, my wife would just say to me, that's all. Grocery store, go get the stuff I need, that's all. Laundry needs done, that's all. Some, though, view him as the sugar daddy. He'll just give me whatever I need, whatever I want to, because I'm pretty. Do you recognize the guy on the left? With the hair and everything? Who is that? He's got more than $25 in his checking account, just so you know. You recognize the young lady on the right? That's wife number 3. That's right. Yeah, I did this the first service, and someone said, wife number 5. Wife number 15. They didn't know. And that's how some people look at God. I go to God when I'm in a jam. And I say, see how pretty I am? You said you loved me. Give me what I want when I want it. You said you love me. So love means you give me what I want when I want it, right? That's why he had to teach us what love means. Love is me laying down my life for you when it's not convenient, when it's not pretty, when there's suffering involved. We all know that in our hearts. If we ever go into suffering, who is it that shows up to be with us when we're suffering? The people who love us. Who really love us, don't just say they love us. Some view him as the stingy Scrooge. Aha! I knew that this church would do this. I knew they would go this direction. You can't trust that eldership. You can't trust that staff. You can't trust that board. They're just doing what they want. And we look for scapegoats, like Ebenezer Scrooge. That must be why we're making all these decisions we're making here. We're not doing so we have that view of God too. And we just bring it to the people around us. Or some view God as our last hope. This is an actual pamphlet. Let's go back to that pamphlet quickly. An actual pamphlet that was used by the brown shirts in the Nationalsozialismus Partei, abbreviated as Nazis. The National Socialism Party is what that means. And this is what they used to get people to come out to their meetings when they were first getting started in the early 1930s, like 1931, 32, before they invaded Czechoslovakia and Hungary and so forth. They knew this would communicate with their audience because their audience was so in desperate need of somebody telling us we're worth something, because we haven't survived the Versailles Treaty. In World War I, we were treated horribly, and people just don't appreciate the fatherland the way that Wagner taught us to. And so this one kid stood up and said, follow me. I'll give you what you need. And he had a funny mustache, and his hair went over to the side. But when he stood up to speak, when I first learned German, one of the things I was assigned to do by my teacher was to watch speeches of Hitler. He's mesmerizing, even though I could barely understand every other word. When he starts getting warmed up, you can just see people going, just gulping. They couldn't believe it because he was so sure of himself, so absolutely sure that he could lead them out of their suffering. He's our last hope. He's der Führer. Now, when people go to God with that mentality, and when they go to Christ, and they go to religion with that mentality, is that healthy? I'll just say, make me one of your employees. I'm not worthy to be your son. The key word in that sentence is, I'm not worthy. And yes, in one sense, we're not. But we were worth enough for him to die for us. Personally, not through a prophet, not through a third party. He personally got involved in my life and your life. That's how much his love goes. I dare you to plumb the fathoms of that love. This week, I dare you. I double dog dare you. So, why does the Father accept him back? Click. Click. Because his time of suffering is over. You know who this is? This is Captain Phillips. Tom Hanks played him, not the other way around. I just saw this movie the other night on demand, and I was really impressed with it. I didn't think I would like it as much as I did, but I could watch Tom Hanks read the phone book and still get off on it, probably. He's one of my favorite actors. He put his crew first. He made sure they were ensconced away in the engine room so that these pirates couldn't get to them. And he voluntarily walked into the craft that got off of the boat, the lifeboat. See the film if you haven't seen it yet. It's really worth a read. Or, because healthy change is good for the soul. By the way, that thing that she's touching is called a typewriter. For those of you wondering what that is. Or, finally, the real reason. My son is alive again. And I will celebrate that. I know that some of you have children who are lost, and you're praying for them every day. We talked about this in the first service a little bit more. I know that some of you have parents that are lost, and you're praying for them every day. Don't stop praying. Just remember who you're tapping into when you pray. You're not talking to the angry boss. You're not talking to the Führer. You're talking to your Father. And He listens. He loves to listen. That's who He is. This is not an act for Him. This is not a role He plays. He's not an actor. That's who He is.